The dust never settled in the Galactic archives. Dr. Caney Torvik had worked there for 15 years, and the ancient particles still danced in the artificial light like tiny ghosts. Today felt different, though. The air itself seemed to whisper of old secrets as he walked through the endless corridors of preserved knowledge. Caney was not like other researchers. Where others saw random artifacts, he saw patterns. His species, the tall and slender Vorthak, had evolved to notice connections that others missed. It was this gift that had brought him to the most restricted section of the archives, where the oldest warnings in galactic history were kept. The first tablet he found was made of crystal that hummed with inner light. It belonged to the ethereal builders, a race that had vanished 3 million years ago. Their language was complex, but Caney had spent decades learning to read their flowing script. The message was simple and terrifying. The blue world sleeps with demons. Let none wake what lies beneath the waters. Caney set the tablet aside and reached for another artifact. This one was different, a metal sphere covered in geometric patterns. It had belonged to the crystal minds, silicon-based creatures that thought in perfect mathematical equations. They had disappeared 2 million years ago, leaving behind only their calculated warnings. The sphere projected holographic symbols when touched. Caney watched as the alien mathematics formed words he could understand. In the outer spiral, death dreams in blue. The sleepers must never wake. Distance is safety. His hands trembled as he reached for the third artifact. The Void Walkers had been masters of space and time, creatures that could step between dimensions. They had ruled the galaxy for 1 million years before something made them flee to the empty spaces between stars. Their warning was carved into a piece of metal that seemed to bend light around itself. We have seen the blue world in our travels, through time. In all futures where the sleepers wake, the galaxy screams. We go now to the cold dark, where dreams cannot follow. Caney stepped back from the artifacts, his mind racing. 3 different species, separated by millions of years, all warning about the same thing. A blue world in the outer spiral. A place where something slept and must never be awakened. He had read about dozens of other warnings over the years. The singing crystals of Polaris had left behind resonance patterns that spelled out coordinates and the words, "never approach." The Machine Empire had programmed their final AI with one command: avoid the third planet of a yellow star in the Outer Rim. Even the plant-based photosynthetic collective had grown warning patterns into their final garden worlds before they withered away. All the warnings pointed to the same location. All spoke of sleepers that must not wake. Caney pulled up the galactic star charts on his portable device. The coordinates from all the warnings led to a small system in the outer spiral arm. A yellow star with several planets, the third one covered in blue oceans. According to recent surveys, it was inhabited by a young species that called their world Earth and themselves humans. The humans had just achieved faster-than-light travel. Their first diplomatic vessel was scheduled to arrive at Station Omega-7 in 3 days. Caney felt a chill run through his body. The warnings had not been about keeping humans away from the galaxy. They had been about keeping the galaxy away from Earth. He spent the next 2 days gathering every warning he could find. The pattern was always the same. Ancient civilizations that had explored every corner of the galaxy, mapped every star system, conquered or befriended countless worlds, but they all had the same blind spot. They all avoided one small blue planet in the outer rim. The warnings spoke of dreams that could kill, of sleepers in the deep, of something vast and patient waiting beneath blue waters. Some described it as a presence that existed between dimensions. Others called it a hunger that fed on civilizations themselves. All agreed that it must never be disturbed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Caney stood at the observation deck of Station Omega-7 and watched as humanity's first interstellar ship approached. The vessel was crewed by galactic standards, held together with determination and hope rather than advanced technology. The humans aboard probably thought they were about to join a peaceful galactic community. They had no idea what they carried with them. Caney had spent sleepless hours trying to understand the warnings. The ancient civilizations had not feared humans. They had feared something else, something that slept on the human homeworld, something that had been contained there for millions of years by barriers that might be weakening. The human ship docked with a soft vibration that Caney felt through the station's hull. Soon, the humans would step onto the station. They would shake hands and tentacles with representatives from dozens of worlds. They would sign treaties and establish trade routes. They would open a door that had been sealed since before their species had learned to use fire. As the airlock hissed open and the first human diplomat stepped onto the station, Caney noticed something that made his blood freeze. The human's eyes held depths that seemed older than they should be. When the human smiled and spoke words of greeting, Caney heard something else underneath, a whisper so faint it might have been imagination. But Caney's species was good at noticing patterns, and he had just noticed the most terrifying pattern of all. The humans did not know they were prison guards. They did not know what slept beneath their blue oceans, and they certainly did not know that by leaving their world and joining galactic society, they might have just unlocked a cage that had held for millions of years. The ancient warnings had been right. The sleepers were beginning to stir, and the galaxy was about to learn why some doors should never be opened. The emergency beacon cut through space like a scream in the dark. Captain Maya Cross felt it before her ship's computers even registered the signal, a wrongness that made her teeth ache and her vision blur at the edges. 3 months into humanity's first deep space exploration mission, and they were already finding things that should not exist. Maya rubbed her temples as the beacon's strange frequency filled the bridge of the horizon's edge. Her crew of 12 had been handpicked from Earth's best pilots, scientists, and soldiers. They were supposed to map trade routes and establish diplomatic contacts with humanity's new galactic neighbors. Instead, they kept finding graveyards. "Fourth derelict this week," reported her navigation officer, Tom Bradley. His usually steady voice carried a tremor that had grown worse with each discovery. "Same pattern as the others. No signs of battle. Damage. No energy signatures, just floating." Maya stared at the view screen as the alien vessel came into focus. Like the others, it drifted in perfect silence, its hull unmarked by weapon fire or collision damage. The ship's design was unlike anything in their databases. Organic curves mixed with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Life. Signs?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. "Negative for active biological functions," replied Dr. Lisa Park, their xenobiologist. "But there's something strange about the readings. The bioscanners detect organic matter, but it's not decomposing. It's like the crew is just paused." Maya had seen this before. 3 ships in 3 weeks, all from different species, all found drifting in the same sector of space near Earth's solar system. Each vessel contained a crew in perfect preservation, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. "Bring us alongside," Maya ordered. "Standard docking procedures." The boarding party consisted of Maya, Dr. Park, and Security Chief David Santos. They had done this routine 3 times before, but it never got easier. The airlock hissed as they crossed from their ship to the alien vessel, and immediately Maya felt the wrongness increase. The alien ship's corridor stretched ahead of them, lit by bioluminescent panels that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. The walls were smooth and curved, covered in symbols that seemed to shift when looked at directly. Maya's translator device remained silent. It could not process whatever language this was. They found the crew in what appeared to be the bridge. 7 alien beings sat at their stations, their bodies perfectly preserved but their faces locked in expressions of pure horror. Their eyes were wide, their mouths open as if screaming at something invisible. Same as the others, Dr. Park whispered, running her scanner over the nearest alien. No signs of disease, poison, or physical trauma. They just stopped, like someone pressed a pause button on their entire biology. Maya approached the central command station. The alien captain was a tall insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes. Its hands were frozen in the act of reaching for what looked like an emergency beacon. The same beacon that had drawn Maya's ship here. "Captain," Santos called from across the bridge, "you need to see this." Santos was standing in front of a holographic display that still functioned despite the ship's apparent abandonment. The display showed star charts, but they were unlike any Maya had seen. These charts focused entirely on one small section of the galaxy, the sector containing Earth's solar system. "They were heading toward Earth," Santos said, his voice tight with concern. "Look at these trajectory calculations. They were on a direct course for our home system." Dr. Park joined them at the display. "This is the 3rd ship we found with the same flight plan. Different species, different time periods based on the technology, but all heading to Earth." Maya studied the holographic star charts. Red symbols marked locations throughout the galaxy, connected by dotted lines that all converged on one point: Earth. The pattern suggested something she did not want to believe. "They were drawn there," she said quietly. Something was calling them to Earth. As if responding to her words, the holographic display flickered and changed. New images appeared, recordings from the ship's final moments. Maya watched as the alien crew went about their normal duties, then suddenly stopped. One by one, they turned to stare in the same direction, their expressions shifting from confusion to wonder to absolute terror. The recording had no audio, but Maya could see the aliens screaming at something beyond the camera's view. They clawed at their heads, tried to run, but their movements became slower and slower until they froze in their final positions of horror. "We need to get back to our ship," Maya said, but her words came out strangely distorted. The air around them seemed to thicken, and she realized she was having the same dreams that had been plaguing her crew for weeks. Dreams of vast things moving beneath blue oceans. Dreams of cities that existed in spaces between spaces. Dreams of whispers that promised ancient knowledge to anyone willing to listen. "Captain," Dr. Park's voice seemed to come from very far away. "I'm reading massive gravitational anomalies in the Earth system. Something big is moving down there." Maya tried to focus, but the whispers were getting louder. They spoke in languages she had never heard but somehow understood. They told her about the deep places beneath Earth's oceans, about sleepers who had waited so long to wake, about the purpose humanity had never known they served. "Maya!" Santos grabbed her arm, shaking her back to awareness. "We have to go! Now!" They ran through the alien corridors as the whispers followed them. Behind them, Maya could hear something that might have been laughter, or might have been the sound of space itself tearing. They made it to their ship just as the alien vessel began to dissolve, its matter scattering into cosmic dust. Back on the horizon's edge, Maya found her crew gathered on the bridge, all staring at the main view screen. Earth filled the display, blue and beautiful and terrible. Maya could see storm systems moving across the oceans, but they moved in patterns that made no sense, forming shapes that resembled writing in some cosmic language. "Captain," Tom Bradley said, his voice hollow with exhaustion, "we've been having the dreams too. All of us. Every night since we left Earth. Dreams about things in the deep calling us home." Maya looked at her crew and saw the same haunted expression she had seen on the faces of the alien corpses. They were all hearing the whispers now, all feeling the pull of something vast and patient beneath Earth's blue waters. "Set course for Earth," Maya ordered, though she was not sure if the words came from her own will or from something else speaking, through her. "It's time to go home." As the horizon's edge turned toward humanity's homeworld, Maya realized they were not returning as explorers or diplomats. They were returning as the latest in a long line of species drawn by an ancient call. From the deep. The only difference was that this time the call was coming from their own world. The whispers grew stronger with each passing hour, promising revelations and truths that no living mind was meant to understand. Maya tried to resist, but she could feel her crew's resolve weakening. Soon they would all understand why so many ships had died trying to reach Earth. Soon they would learn what humanity had unknowingly been guarding all these years. Dr. Emma Price had always loved the ocean's mysteries, but she never expected to find architecture at the bottom of the world. 2 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific, where sunlight had never touched and pressure should have crushed any structure, impossible buildings waited in the dark. Emma adjusted her position in the deep-sea submersible and stared at the sonar readings that made no sense. The research vessel Ocean's Gate floated far above her, connected by a thin lifeline and prayer. Her team had been mapping the deepest ocean trenches for 6 months, using advanced scanning equipment provided by humanity's new alien allies. What they found defied every law of physics she knew. "Command, are you seeing this?" Emma spoke into her communications device, watching as the submersible's lights revealed structures that should not exist. "The Mariana Trench has buildings, actual buildings." The response from the surface ship crackled with static. "We're seeing it, Emma. The alien scanners are going crazy down here. They're detecting materials that don't match anything in their databases." Emma guided the submersible closer to the nearest structure. It rose from the ocean floor like a twisted cathedral, its walls covered in geometric patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. The building seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Her depth meters said she was getting closer, but the structure appeared to remain the same distance away. "The geometry is wrong," she reported, her voice tight with confusion. "I'm measuring angles that add up to more than they should. It's like the buildings exist in more dimensions than we can perceive." Her teammate, Dr. Robert Chen, was monitoring from the surface. His voice came through the communications system, strained with disbelief. "Emma, we're picking up movement down there, massive movement. Something the size of a city block just shifted near your position." Emma felt her heart skip as the submersible's external cameras detected motion in the darkness. Something vast was stirring in the depths, awakening after what might have been millions of years of slumber. The alien scanning equipment began emitting warning sounds that needed no translation. "I'm seeing bioluminescent patterns," Emma reported, her voice barely a whisper. "Lights arranged in formations that look almost like neural networks, as if the ocean floor itself is thinking." The patterns of light spread outward from the impossible buildings, creating a web of illumination that stretched beyond the range of her cameras. Emma realized she was looking at something alive, something so large that entire city blocks were just small parts of its structure. "Emma, get out of there now!" came Chen's urgent voice from above. "Our alien technical advisors are screaming about containment breaches and dimensional instabilities. They say whatever's down there was never supposed to be disturbed." But Emma could not look away from the lights. They pulsed in patterns that seemed familiar, as if she had seen them before in dreams she could not quite remember. The whispers started then, not heard with her ears, but felt directly in her mind. Ancient voices speaking in languages that predated human civilization. The voices told her things she did not want to know. They spoke of the time before continents, when Earth's oceans covered creatures that had come from spaces between stars. They told her about the Great Imprisonment, when younger gods had trapped elder things beneath miles of water and stone. "The prison weakens," the voices whispered. "The guards have left their posts. Soon we rise to reclaim what was always ours." Emma tried to steer the submersible away, but the controls no longer responded to her touch. The vessel drifted closer to the impossible architecture, pulled by currents that moved against all natural laws. Through the viewing port, she could see details that made her mind recoil. The buildings were not built. They were grown. Organic structures that breathed and pulsed with alien life. Windows that were actually eyes looking out from spaces that existed sideways to reality. Doorways that opened onto voids filled with stars that had never been part of Earth's sky. "Emma? Your life signs are spiking," Chen's voice sounded panicked. "We're reading massive electromagnetic disturbances. The alien equipment is shutting down to protect itself." Emma could feel her sanity fraying as the whispers grew louder. The voices belonged to things that had been ancient when the first single-celled organisms learned to divide. They had ruled the galaxy when Earth's sun was still a cloud of cosmic dust. They had been imprisoned here by civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity's ancestors crawled from the primordial soup. "They made us," Emma said, understanding flooding through her mind like ice water. "Humans. We weren't evolution's accident. We were designed, created to be guards for a prison we never knew existed." The revelation came with images that burned themselves into her memory. Ancient alien civilizations working together to contain something so terrible that they had sacrificed entire star systems to build the prison. Earth had been chosen as the final lock, seeded with aggressive, territorial creatures who would keep other species away. Humanity's violence was not a flaw, it was a feature. Their wars, their aggression, their tendency to fight anything that threatened their territory, all of it designed to make Earth too dangerous for other species to approach. The perfect guards for a cosmic jail. But now the guards have left their posts, the whispers continued. Now they travel to the stars, weakening the barriers we helped them build. Soon the deep will rise, and the galaxy will remember why we were feared. Emma's submersible began to shake as massive tentacles, each the size of a skyscraper, reached up from the abyss. They were not made of flesh, but of something that existed between matter and energy, visible only because they chose to be seen. Surface. "Surface! Surface!" Chen screamed through the communicator. "Emergency ascent! The ocean temperature is spiking! Something massive is rising from the deep trenches!" Emma hit the emergency ballast release, but it was too late. The tentacles wrapped around her submersible with curious gentleness, examining the tiny craft with intelligence that was vast and alien and utterly without compassion. Through the viewing port, Emma saw an eye open in the darkness. It was larger than her research ship above, pupil black as the space between galaxies. When it focused on her, Emma felt her mind touch something so ancient and powerful that her consciousness nearly shattered from the contact. The eye blinked once, and Emma found herself back on the surface, her submersible floating beside the ocean's gate with no memory of how she had escaped the depths. Her crew pulled her aboard, their faces pale with terror. "The trenches," Chen said, staring at the sonar readings. "They're empty now. Whatever was down there is gone." Emma looked at the data and felt her blood turn to ice. The impossible buildings had vanished. The massive life signs had disappeared. But the ocean itself had changed. Satellite images showed currents moving in patterns that formed symbols across thousands of miles of water. The symbols spelled out a message in every language humans had ever spoken. "We rise." As Emma watched the ocean write its message across the surface of the world, she realized that humanity's entry into galactic society had triggered something that should have remained dormant forever. The guards had left their posts, and the prisoners were finally free to escape. The ancient warnings had been right. Earth's deepest secrets were stirring, and the galaxy was about to learn why some doors should never be opened. Admiral David Kane had seen impossible things before, but watching a moon vanish and reappear 3 days later was new even for him. The joint human-alien task force under his command floated in space near Jupiter's orbit, their ships arranged in a defensive formation that felt increasingly pointless as reality itself began to break down around them. The trouble had started 6 weeks ago when humanity established its fifth interstellar colony. Within hours of the colony ship reaching its destination, space-time distortions began manifesting throughout the solar system. Ships disappeared from one location and appeared in another. Gravitational fields fluctuated without cause. Most disturbing of all, rescue teams kept finding vessels with crews that spoke of impossible things. "Another one, Admiral," reported Commander Sarah Johnson from the tactical station of the flagship Endeavour. "Civilian transport Morning Star. They've been missing for 4 days." Kane watched as the transport ship materialized out of empty space, its hull intact, but something fundamentally wrong about its appearance. The vessel seemed to flicker between existing and not existing, as if it could not decide which state of reality it belonged to. "Life signs?" Kane asked, though he dreaded the answer. "All crew members alive and physically unharmed," Johnson replied. "But Admiral, their psychological profiles are off the charts. The ship's counselor is requesting immediate psychiatric evacuation for the entire crew." Kane had heard this before. Every ship that vanished and returned brought back crews babbling about cities that existed in the spaces between dimensions. They spoke of vast entities that swam through cosmic voids like fish through water. Most disturbing, they all described the same place, a city beneath Earth's oceans that somehow extended into other realities. "Bring them aboard," Kane ordered. "Full quarantine protocols." As the survivors were transferred to the Endeavour, Kane reviewed the reports that had been flooding in from across the galaxy. Ancient alien monitoring stations, hidden in dead systems for millions of years, had suddenly activated. They were broadcasting emergency signals in languages so old that even the galaxy's most advanced translation computers could barely interpret them. The messages all said the same thing. "The seals are breaking. The deep rises. All civilizations must flee to the dark spaces between stars." Kane's alien liaison officer, a crystalline being called Nexus, approached his command chair with movements that suggested barely controlled panic. In the months since first contact, Kane had never seen the crystal entity display anything resembling fear. "Admiral Kane," Nexus said, its voice chiming like broken bells. "We have received communications from the Galactic Council. They are evacuating all inhabited systems within 1,000 light-years of Earth." Kane felt his blood turn cold. Evacuating? Why? "The monitoring stations were built by the First Alliance," Nexus explained. 13 extinct civilizations that united to contain something they called the Deep Ones. According to our archives, they sacrificed their entire species to build a prison around entities that existed before our galaxy formed. Kane stared at the tactical display showing Earth as a small blue dot in the distance. "And Earth is part of this prison?" "Not part of it, Admiral. Earth is the prison. The planet was specifically chosen and modified to contain things that should not exist in our reality. Your species was created to be the wardens, though your ancestors never knew their purpose." The revelation hit Kane like a physical blow. Humanity had always wondered why they seemed so different from other galactic species, more aggressive, more territorial, more willing to fight to the death for their home. Now he understood. They had been designed that way. The Deep One's influence. Reality through dreams and whispers, Nexus continued. For millions of years, your species' aggression kept other civilizations away from Earth. But now that humans have joined galactic society, now that your people travel between stars, the prison is weakening, Kane's communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. The deep ocean monitoring stations are detecting massive movement in the abyssal trenches. Something is rising from the deepest parts of the ocean." Kane activated the long-range communication system. The face of General Patricia Harrison appeared on the main screen, her usually composed features tight with barely controlled terror. "David, we have a situation," she said without preamble. Our deep-sea installations have gone dark. The last transmission showed creatures the size of cities moving through the ocean depths. But that's not the worst part. Kane waited, knowing that whatever came next would be terrible. The creatures aren't just in our oceans anymore, Harrison continued. They're appearing in the oceans of every world humanity has colonized. Every planet we've touched is manifesting the same entities. It's like they're spreading through our own expansion routes. The implications crashed into Kane's mind like a tidal wave. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy was not exploration, it was infection. Every world they touched became a new point where the deep ones could manifest. The ancient prison was not just failing, it was actively spreading. "Admiral," Nexus said, its crystalline form flickering with distress. "The other ships in your fleet are reporting similar phenomena. Crews are experiencing shared dreams of underwater cities. Some are trying to navigate their vessels toward Earth despite direct orders to maintain position." Kane looked around his bridge and saw the signs he had been dreading. His crew moved with the sluggish motions of people fighting an invisible influence. Their eyes held depths that seemed older than they should be. When they spoke, their voices carried undertones of something vast and patient. "How long do we have?" Kane asked. According to the ancient records, once the deep ones begin manifesting outside their prison, reality itself becomes unstable, Nexus replied. The previous civilizations estimated they had perhaps months before complete dimensional collapse. Kane made the hardest decision of his military career. He activated the fleet-wide communication system and began issuing orders for humanity's complete withdrawal from galactic society. Every human ship, every colony, every diplomatic mission would return to Earth immediately. "Sir," Commander Johnson asked, her voice strange and distant. "What do we tell them? How do we explain why humanity is abandoning the galaxy?" Kane looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Red. Warning indicators were appearing around each one as space-time distortions manifested near human-occupied worlds. The deep ones were using humanity's own expansion as a pathway to escape their prison. "We tell them the truth," Kane said. "We tell them that humanity was never meant to leave Earth. We were meant to stay and guard something that should never be released." As the Endeavor turned toward Earth, Kane watched the galaxy begin to tear itself apart. Ancient monitoring stations exploded in bursts of energy that could be seen from light years away. Entire star systems flickered out of existence, as the deep ones spread their influence through dimensions that had no names. The galaxy's oldest warnings had been right. Some doors should never be opened, and some guards should never leave their posts. Humanity was about to learn the true cost of reaching for the stars. In the depths of space, something vast and ancient laughed with a sound like dying galaxies, and the first tentacle of something impossible began reaching through reality toward worlds that had never known fear. The truth lay scattered across 13 different archaeological sites, and Dr. Kane Torvik was the first being in 3 million years to piece it together. Standing in the ruins of the First Alliance's final command center on a dead world at the galaxy's edge, he held in his hands the complete record of humanity's creation and the galaxy's doom. Captain Maya Cross stood beside him, her mind finally clear after weeks of fighting the whispers from the deep. The horizon's edge had barely escaped Earth's solar system as reality began collapsing around the planet. Now, with Admiral Kane's joint task force holding a desperate perimeter around the expanding zone of chaos, they had perhaps hours to find a solution. "Read it," Maya said, her voice hoarse from screaming at things that existed between dimensions. "All of it. We need to know what we're really dealing with." Kane activated the ancient holographic projector, and the air filled with images of creatures that hurt to look at directly. The recording was in the trade language of the First Alliance, translated by systems that had been analyzing galactic linguistics for millions of years. Final log of Coordinator Prime Azrath, the hologram began, showing a being that seemed to be made of living mathematics. The deep ones have been contained, but at a cost beyond calculation. 13 civilizations, extinct. 47 worlds rendered uninhabitable. Entire star systems sacrificed to build the barriers. The hologram showed images of the construction process. Reality warping technology beyond anything the current galaxy possessed, used to create a prison that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. At the center of it all was Earth, a blue marble selected for very specific reasons. The prison requires active maintenance, the recording continued. The deep ones exist partially outside our reality and constantly attempt to break through. We have therefore implemented Protocol Omega, the creation of a guardian species. Maya watched in fascination and horror as the hologram showed the genetic engineering of early human ancestors. The First Alliance had taken primitive mammals and enhanced them with traits from across the galaxy. The territorial aggression of the Vorthak, the pack loyalty of the crystal mines, the strategic thinking of the ethereal builders. The Guardians have been programmed with behavioral modifications that will activate if other species approach their world, the recording explained. They will become increasingly hostile and violent toward outsiders, ensuring the prison remains isolated. This aggression is necessary. The deep ones corrupt all intelligent life they contact, but only if that life willingly approaches Earth. Caney paused the recording and looked at Maya. Humanity's aggression was a defense mechanism. Your species was designed to keep everyone else away from Earth, including yourselves. But we did leave, Maya said. We achieved spaceflight and joined galactic society. What happens when the guards abandon their posts? Caney restarted the recording, and Coordinator Azrath's mathematical form continued its explanation. Should the Guardians ever leave their world, the prison will begin to fail. The deep ones will spread through any pathway the Guardians create. This scenario has a 0% survival rate for galactic civilization. The hologram showed simulations of what would happen if humanity achieved spaceflight. Every world they visited would become a new manifestation point for the deep ones. Every ship they sent out would carry the infection further into the galaxy. Humanity's expansion would not be exploration. It would be the end of everything. There is one theoretical solution, the recording continued. If the Guardians can be convinced to return to their world and undergo the final protocol, the prison can be reinforced. However, this would require the complete sacrifice of the Guardian species. Maya felt her heart stop. Sacrifice? The hologram showed the details of the final protocol. Humanity would need to willingly merge with the prison itself, becoming part of the barriers that contained the deep ones. Every human being would need to enter a state between life and death, their consciousness spread across 11 dimensions to maintain the seals forever. The Guardians will live, Azrath's image explained, but not as they understand life. They will become part of the barrier itself, eternal watchers ensuring the deep ones never escape. Their sacrifice will save the galaxy, but they will never again know individual existence. The recording ended, leaving Maya and Caney in silence as the weight of the revelation settled on them. Outside the ruins, they could see the effects of the prison's failure spreading. Stars flickered out of existence. Space itself seemed to ripple like water. In the distance, tentacles the size of solar systems reached through cracks in reality. There has to be another way, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Caney showed her the mathematical proofs that filled the rest of the archaeological site. 13 civilizations had spent their final years calculating alternatives. Every equation led to the same conclusion. Either humanity sacrificed itself to maintain the prison, or the galaxy would fall to entities that existed before time itself. Maya's communications device crackled to life. Admiral Kane's voice was tight with desperation. "Maya, we're running out of time. The distortion field is expanding faster than our ships can retreat. Earth is gone. It's been replaced by some kind of dimensional nexus. We can see things moving in there that our instruments can't properly measure. David, Maya said into the communicator, we found the solution, but you're not going to like it. She explained the final protocol while Caney transmitted the technical specifications to the human fleet. The silence that followed lasted so long that Maya thought the connection had been lost. How many? Kane finally asked. All of us, Maya replied. Every human being would need to participate. Children, adults, elderly, everyone becomes part of the barrier. It's the only way to strengthen the prison enough to contain what's already breaking through. Another long silence. When Kane spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a species' fate. Maya, I'm looking at reports from across the galaxy. Entire civilizations are evacuating their home systems. The Galactic Council is dissolving. Everyone is running to the edge of the galaxy hoping distance will save them. It won't, Caney said, taking the communicator. Admiral Kane, this is Dr. Torvik. The deep ones exist outside normal space-time. Distance is meaningless to them. Once they fully manifest, they will consume every form of consciousness in the galaxy. Running will only delay the inevitable. Maya watched the holographic displays showing the expanding chaos around Earth. Reality itself was becoming unstable as things that should not exist forced their way into dimensions that could barely contain them. She could see human ships trapped. In the distortion field, their crews probably experiencing visions of impossible geometries and cities that existed sideways to sanity. There's something else, Maya said, studying the ancient records. The final protocol isn't just about sacrifice, it's about choice. Every human has to willingly participate. Even one person refusing would create a weakness the deep ones could exploit. The implications were staggering. How do you convince an entire species to sacrifice their individual existence for the greater good? How do you explain to parents that their children must become part of an eternal prison to save a galaxy they have barely begun to explore? Kane's voice came through the communicator, now addressing the entire human fleet. All vessels, this is Admiral Kane. We are implementing emergency evacuation protocols. Every human in the galaxy is to return to Earth immediately. This is not a request. This is a species-wide survival imperative. David, Maya interrupted, Earth doesn't exist anymore. It's been replaced by some kind of dimensional gateway. How can we return to a planet that's no longer there? According to these readings, Caney said, pointing to the ancient technical specifications, the final protocol must be activated from within the prison itself. Humanity will have to enter the dimensional nexus that Earth has become. Maya felt her sanity threatening to crack as she contemplated what that meant. They would have to fly their ships into a reality storm where physics no longer applied, where the deep ones waited with patience that spanned geological ages. They would have to navigate through spaces where up and down were matters of opinion and time moved in spirals. The children, Maya whispered. How do we ask parents to bring their children into that nightmare? Caney showed her another section of the ancient records. The First Alliance faced the same question. They determined that consciousness itself is what powers the barrier. The young minds, innocent and uncorrupted by fear, would actually be the strongest components of the prison. The cruelty of it was overwhelming. Humanity's children, their hope for the future, would become eternal guardians trapped in a state between existence and void. They would never grow up, never fall in love, never have children of their own. But they would save every other species in the galaxy from a fate worse than extinction. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by warning alarms from their ship. Through the viewport, she could see reality distorting as the chaos from Earth's system spread outward. Stars were going out, not dying but simply ceasing to exist, as the deep ones rewrote the fundamental laws of physics. Decision time, Kane's voice came through the communicator. Maya, Caney, are you willing to lead the first group into the Nexus? Someone has to show the way, and people are more likely to follow if they see their leaders going first. Maya looked at Caney, then at the ancient records that outlined humanity's purpose and fate. In the distance, she could see human ships turning toward the expanding anomaly that had once been Earth. Families making the hardest choice in human history, sacrificing their individual existence to become part of something larger and more terrible than they could comprehend. "Yes," Maya said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We'll lead the way." As the horizon's edge turned toward the dimensional nexus, Maya wondered if this was how humanity was always meant to end. Not with exploration and expansion, but with the ultimate act of species-wide selflessness. They had been created to be guards, and now they would become the prison itself. The whispers from the deep grew louder as they approached the anomaly, but now Maya understood them differently. The deep ones were not just ancient horrors, they were refugees from a reality that had been consumed by something even worse. The prison was not just to protect the galaxy from them, but to protect them from what they had fled. In the end, Maya realized, everyone was running from something. The deep ones ran from whatever had destroyed their original reality. The galaxy's civilizations ran from the deep ones. And now humanity would stop running and become the final barrier against the dark. As reality dissolved around them and the horizon's edge entered spaces that had no names, Maya made peace with humanity's fate. They would not explore the stars or build galactic empires. Instead, they would become something far more important, the eternal guardians who ensured that the universe itself could continue to exist. The last human transmission ever sent to the galaxy was simple. "We understand our purpose now. The eye door is closing. We will hold it shut forever." And in the spaces between dimensions, where time moved in circles and geometry was a matter of will, humanity took its place as the final seal on a prison that contained the galaxy's darkest secret. They had reached for the stars only to discover they were meant to be the foundation that held everything together. The ancient warnings had been right all along. Some doors should never be opened, and some guards must never abandon their posts. Humanity had learned this lesson at the cost of their freedom, but they had saved something infinitely more precious, the right of every other species in the galaxy to exist.